say my belly. I feel me cell phone, so me call anybody. Call Mr. Man, call Granny. On the island flow, come boom.
Yes, there is no need for to force no more. Cause it flow, come up plan, you're paying less for more.
Flow got a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you they on. Just use your flow.
Dial star 129 number sign to activate your combo plan today.
Mustn't forget the bop.
I see you like bop too.
If I'm cleaning the garage, I need bop.
One bop for the home and one for the office.
Bop insecticide, preferred for its proven performance. Bop's fast-acting, long-lasting. Bop stops both flying and crawling insects. Get serious. Get Bop.
Like us on Facebook, www.facebook.com/ramsupermarket. Follow us on Twitter, www.twitter.com/ramsupermarket. And subscribe to us on YouTube, www.youtube.com/ramsupermarket.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 30 days of unlimited social messaging, 10 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, and 1,000 local anywhere calls and texts with the always-on prepaid plan, all for $100. Keep your number when you switch to St. Kitts' most reliable LTE network. Switch to Flow. It only gets better.
Good morning, and welcome to Voices for today, Tuesday, June 23rd. I'm your host, Jermaine Abel, and it's an interesting day. We still have the Sahara dust blowing over here in St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as, it's a hot and a humid day outside. Well, for the better part of the hour, we will be discussing the elections results. Well, there's the non-elections results there in Guyana, as well as you can just call and share your views, share your thoughts on how you're coping with the Sahara dust, and if there's any issues you're having with that. Welcome back to Voices here on Win FM. Like I said, we will be jumping over to Guyana just to get a sense of what transpired yesterday in the courts. We have with us Mr. Aubrey Norton from the APNU AFC incumbent in Guyana. Mr. Norton, good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, the process is still being dragged out here, and just to give my listeners a sense of what actually is going on there in Guyana before we jump into the court matter.
I didn't hear that. Could you go that again for me?
I was saying, can you just bring our listeners up to scratch in terms of what has transpired since the last time we spoke here on Voices?
What has transpired since then? We had the recount, which was completed, and then you had a situation where the People's Progressive Party did not want the results emanating from the recount to be considered. What they wanted was to have a declaration based on just the counting of the ballots, when in fact the order that governed the recount demanded that there be reconciliation and that only the votes found in ballot boxes with statutory documents should be considered valid. What in essence happened is the Election Commission chairman directed the CEO to bring his report only considering the tabulation of the ballots in the ballot boxes, and not dealing with the observations which brought to the fore that there was widespread electoral fraud. In that circumstance, a private citizen, Ms. Evelyn David, went to court asking the Court of Appeal in Guyana to, one, establish that it had, they first had to establish that they had jurisdiction to hear the matter. 2 out of the 3 judges concluded that they had jurisdiction, and the matter was heard. The matter was aimed at determining, one, whether the concept most votes meant most valid votes. And as you might be aware by now, the court ruled 2-1 that you had to deal with the valid votes and not just the tabulated votes in the ballot boxes.
Okay, now that you've set the scene basically when it comes to what has happened before the court matter. Now that the applicant was successful in basically getting the court to make a determination on when the definition of more votes in the sense of an elections, where does this whole elections process go from here? Because we know her case came just as the chief elections officer was expected to submit his report. So where do the Elections Commission go from here with this specific court matter now?
Well, as I understand it, the court concluded that the valid votes must be counted, valid votes. And therefore, the chief elections officer is expected to go back and, based on what is written in the order in terms of determining the credibility of the votes, and once the credible valid votes are determined, he will provide a report that should be taken to the Elections Commission chairman for declaration. I understand that overnight, the People's Progressive Party filed an
injunction
in the Caribbean Court of Justice. Well, first of all, Article 177.4, under which this was done, makes it clear that this is a final declaration. The People's Progressive Party is asking the CCJ to intervene. But as I understand, the act governing the CCJ establishes clearly that any part of the Guyana Constitution in which the appeal court has final jurisdiction prior to the coming into force of the CCJ, then the CCJ has no jurisdiction. And the fact that Article 177.4 says that it is final, we believe the CCJ has no locus standi in this matter and will have to throw the PPP's attempt to delay out.
That's understandable that they moved to the court, which many have said is expected. But with this being said, what exactly? Because we there are reports that point to the Elections Commission and the CEO. I'm starting to be corrected here, where he wrote his report, and in some of the numbers he said these are the credible results. So is it a case that he has to go and have is there another recount process? How do you determine the credibility of what
there
he
is
votes?
There is no other recount process in terms of us going through back the boxes. The CEO will have, one, the tabulated results, and two, the observation report identifying all the fraudulent activities. My understanding is the order defines in some regard what is a valid and credible vote. In this regard, a valid and credible vote seems to be a vote that is cast in which all the statutory documents are available, and therefore the credibility can be ascertained. In this circumstance, I think the CEO has at his disposal the data to determine what are credible, valid votes and what aren't, and to put a report to the Elections Commission chairman for her to do the declaration. And like I said before in previous programs, we believe once that is done and the fraudulent votes are removed, the APNU AFC will win the elections with a wider margin.
With that being said, Mr. Norton, some may argue, because there was a discussion that someone asked me recently with regards to, especially those in the Guyanese community here in St. Kitts and Nevis. They asked, even though that is the case, that you pull out this and you pull out that, there is some room that some are suggesting that may also infringe on the quote-unquote valid votes. How do you respond to something like that?
Well, I would say that is something for the Elections Commission to deal with. That wouldn't fall under my domain. What we expect is that the law would be followed, that the order would be followed, and that those votes that are cast and all the statutory documents are there establishing that they are valid, I think those votes should be counted. The others are questionable and should not be included.
Okay, let us look, for example, there were some quote-unquote fraudulent activities that your party, your coalition, highlighted. The dead voted, which is, the new thing, and as well as the overseas voters. Now, how do you have the Elections Commission determine? I know you sent, the chair of the commission sent to immigration to get some of these records. But in terms of, let's try to get the credibility to recognize who voted and who didn't, and who allegedly rose from the dead, apparently, quote unquote. Do you think this process would take, let's say, another 2, 3, 4 weeks, if possible, 2 months, in terms of analyzing who died, who lived overseas, and so forth?
No. We have already, look, under OLE, the official list of electors, you have to cross out the names of those who voted. We checked those lists. We have identified, and they are in the observation report, those persons who voted but should not have because they are dead, which means somebody voted for them. Now, you have a list with that can be checked against the official list of electors. The same is true for the migrants or for the persons who are out of the jurisdiction but voted. You go to the list, we submitted the names of the thousands of persons who would have been out of the jurisdiction and voted. GCOM, therefore, will have that information. But more important, we have a number of ballot boxes. Let's assume we put aside the dead and the migrants, or those who voted but are overseas. You then have thousands of votes in boxes in which there are no official documents. And so it is obvious to me and to any reasonable person that cannot be credible votes. And even if you leave in migration and the dead, and you take away those ballot boxes that just have PPP votes with no credible documents, again, you will be able to verify that those weren't credible and valid votes and therefore should not be counted. So I believe any way you go using the data you have, you will be able to ascertain it and to be able to declare what are the credible votes and those that are not.
Okay, Mr. Norton, just hold a while. We'll have to go pay some bills and we'll come right back here on Voices and continue with the discussion.
found the sound 98.9 FM.
Flow's new combo plan, the people's plan.
Combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow.
I want a combo, but not for my belly. I feel me cell phone, so me call anybody. Call Mr. Man, call Granny. On the island, Flow come boom.
Yes, there is no need for to force no more. Cause it Flow combo plan, you're paying less for more.
Flow got a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow.
Dial star 129 number sign to activate your combo plan today.
Welcome back to Voices here on WinFM 98.9. I'm your host, Jermaine Abel. And for the better part of the first hour of the program, we'll be discussing a bit of the Sahara dust that's affecting us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. But right now, we're discussing the elections results in Guyana, where we had a court, the court handed down a decision yesterday, the Court of Appeal in Guyana. And we have with us Mr. Aubrey Norton. Mr. Norton, with all of that you explained to us earlier, we also heard the incoming chairman of CARICOM, St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister, Dr. I'm trying to remember his name, but the St. Vincent Prime Minister,
Dr. Ralph Gonzalez.
Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, yes, thanks, a good friend of mine. And he's basically saying, get the process over with and accept the results of the recount. Now, he's saying that, but on the flip side to that, there's also some concern and some of what the APNUFC and people in Guyana are speaking about, which is the dead persons' names on the list and those who would have been living overseas, and that is what they're expressing concern about. How do you think an electoral process should be done, and do you think, it's a question that is buzzing around the region, fixed dates for elections. Do you think if the APNUFC should get back into office, is that something that that the government would be looking at? Because why I ask that question is, you have this particular issue in Guyana as well as in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and there's this tendency to call elections when the government thinks elections should be called, not giving the Elections Commission enough time to properly prepare for elections. Is that something that you will be considering should you guys win the elections?
Well, it is obvious we will, because don't forget, the government had begun the process of cleaning the list through house-to-house registration so we could have had a credible list. The People's Progressive Party went to court, and the Chief Justice ruled that you couldn't take people off the list. So we went to the election with a bloated list, and it is that bloated list that the People's Progressive Party used in its strongholds to become involved in electoral fraud. Now, we saw a similar pattern in St. Vincent. In fact, I've seen reports where the people of St. Vincent are talking about cleaning their list. Now, I don't want to get involved in the internal affairs of St. Vincent, but I want to make it clear that Prime Minister Gonzalez has compromised himself. He's a friend of the opposition leader, and he takes no approach that can be considered impartial. In fact, he has become a mouthpiece for the people's progress.
Okay, Mr. Norton, I understand you have strong feelings, but I tend not to have people malign, especially government officials and things. But continue though.
But it is not an issue of maligning. It's if you are a CARICOM leader, your role really is to be a kind of an impartial observer. And you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. And to be involved as a professional. But if before all the issues are clear, you come down in support of one side in a matter like this, it is difficult for you to be considered impartial. And so that is all the point we are making. But let's go to the wider issue. The wider issue is that a number of measures have got to be taken in Guyana in particular, and I sense in the Caribbean in other areas, to deal with the problems of election. One, in the Guyana context, there is need for a credible list. Two, in the Guyana context, I think we have to work to ensure that the presiding officers and returning officers that are appointed are not influenced by the wealth of political parties and their operatives. They need to be trained, and we have to find mechanisms for them to operate in an impartial way. The other thing that I think we need to do in the Guyana context is to go deeper than the election and attempt to solve the ethnic insecurities that exist that produce the tension at election time. And so it is not a case of just fixing the voters list and doing some things here and there. Guyana has deep-rooted ethnic problems that need to be solved. And I believe the government will seek to deal with all of those issues. Some of them you can find short-term solutions to. Some of them you will take long-term solutions. I will also urge the international community to be impartial when dealing with the Guyana situation. For instance, I hope they accept that the ruling of the court is the law and that it is the law that prevails rather than the whims and fancies of political parties. And if they do that, some of the language we were hearing, I think, should come to an end.
Okay, so against that backdrop that you're supportive of electoral reform, that is a fixed election date for elections, basically.
But I didn't say that.
Well,
I didn't say I agreed to a fixed date. I said I agreed to reform. The question of a fixed date is a question that I would look at carefully. And let me tell you why. I believe once you solve or let me put it differently, our laws provide for election to be held no later than 6 months after the swearing in of the president. So there is a period which you can't go outside of unless you go to parliament and get a 2/3 majority to do it. So in terms of a specific date like the United States, I don't know that it is the best thing for us. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm not saying it is. It is something that I will have to study carefully.
But in that sense, Mr. Norton, go ahead.
I do believe, however, we need a mechanism to regularly update the lists so that in any 3 months period, the list should be ready. The problem we had is that our opposition, while they were in government, what they did was keep putting on people on the list, and we weren't cleaning the list in a structured way to ensure that the list is reflective of the persons who should be there. We have not effectively had a new list since 2008. What I'm suggesting here is a good mechanism to regularly update the list with the involvement of all political parties, so it is transparent and above board. And we have a situation where the list could be ready in any 3 months, so that if there is another no confidence motion, you can go to elections. I don't think people recognize that our list wasn't properly updated in years, and therefore there were a lot of problems to be addressed. And when the Chief Justice ruled the way she ruled, we ended up with a bloated list and many of the problems we have. So I'm saying to you 2 things. 1, we need better mechanisms to update the list. And 2, as it comes to a particular date for election, I would prefer more time to review it and look at the pros and cons, and then come out with a decision that is in the best interest of the Guyanese people.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. You know, you have to do some more research in terms of that. But 2 things. 1, I just want to pick you up on the point that you were making, that the opposition, you know, put a lot of people on the list. But what sort of evidence do you have that they're the ones who are actually responsible for the bloated list?
What evidence we have?
Yes.
Well, I probably put it badly. There wasn't a mechanism to clean the list regularly. For instance, there were a lot of people who didn't collect ID cards, but they had to be on the list. And since they were in government, they were in possession of some of those ID cards. We have evidence of that. In fact, in this recount, GCOM identifies all of those persons who didn't collect their ID cards. And when we were doing the recount, there were many people who voted who GCOM would have still had their ID card. And the law states that if they are going to vote without the ID card, there must be an oath of identity, and there was no oath of identity. And so what that means is that they use those person's name, sent people to vote, they voted, and they had no oath of identity. So in that case, again, you have fraudulent votes. And we can prove that because in the observation report, on many occasions, we had them placed when people vote with neither ID card, no oath of identity, but GCOM was still in possession of the ID card.
Okay, let's go back to the point of a fixed date. Yes, and this is a problem that we've been finding throughout the region. So you're saying that if the president or prime minister, wherever it is, St. Kitts, Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad, wherever, is the one holding the key in the back pocket to say, I'm going to call elections day within 3 months, that gives the Elections Commission enough time to clear the list, prepare for elections. Let's say now, Germany is the president. He calls elections on the 25th of December. Fine. That gives the Elections Commission and the whole body the enough time to go and prepare. But we've been finding over maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years, sometime back, that a lot of the prime ministers gave themselves a month or less to prepare for elections when they call the date. So the context is, how prepared would the Elections Commission be? And we're talking about dead names reportedly being on the list. Overseas voters who would have migrated and turned citizens, they're also on the list. So it's in the context of how prepared would elections commissions be. That's why people are saying...
I understand the context of your question, and I agree it's an issue to be addressed. And I have outlined some of the things I think could be done. But there are other issues. Let me give you a simple one. As presently structured, many of our constitutions, they are not like the United States. They have no confidence motion. If you put a fixed election day, do you remove no confidence motions? And if a no confidence motion is passed, would it be legal to have the election before the date? You got what I'm saying to you? They are,
yes.
And that is why I didn't want to pronounce on it. There are a number of variables and options that have to be considered. Or are we going to move to a situation where we put in the Constitution mechanisms for impeachment? When we talk about a fixed date, we are looking at what exists and seeking to change it to a fixed date. In doing that, we have to look at all the pros and cons and the new problems that will be generated. A lot of times, when we talk about solving problems, we tend to find a solution, but not to look to see if that solution brings with it new problems. All I'm saying to you is I am prepared to consider looking at a fixed date, but that can only be done after you did an assessment of the problems that will emerge from a fixed date and to find mechanism to attenuate the negatives rather than accentuate them. So in large measure, it is something that we have to look at carefully and not do the normal thing we do. Well, if this non-fixed date isn't working, then a fixed date is the solution. I don't believe such an approach is scientific or methodologically correct. We need to look at scenarios, options, and then arrive at conclusions.
All right, I understand that. And I agree with that, a comprehensive review of the process is needed before any determination is made. But we'll take a quick break and come back. I want to get from you, I was made to understand that protests will be had today. So, but before you respond to that, we have to take a quick break, acknowledge our sponsors, and we come right back.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
Pour it up, need the thirst quencher in my cup. If you have one, hold it up and say, must the the colors in my life. Refreshing and nice, and I drink that what we like. But stand you full of vibes, living for the color. And I'm black and white, we do what we like. We live to enjoy life. Buster, pour it up, different flavor. Load it up. If you have one, hold it up and say, must the colors in my life.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 30 days of unlimited social messaging, 10 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, and 1,000 local anywhere calls and texts. With the always-on prepaid plan, all for $100. Keep your number when you switch to St. Kitts' most reliable LTE network. Switch to Flow. It only gets better.
Welcome back to Voices for today, Tuesday, June 23rd. I'm Jermaine Abel, and we're discussing the Guyana court case that ended yesterday and basically put the decision back into the hands of the Elections Commission down there. We have with us Aubrey Norton of the APNU AFC Coalition in Guyana. Mr. Norton, I was told that a number of protest actions would be had today. Can you just speak to that?
Well, I don't know. Incidentally, I stayed at home and work all day, so I don't know that if there is protests. And protests can come in two fashion. One is organized in the sense of some political party organized it, and they are spontaneous protests. I can't at this stage confirm whether they are protests going on or not.
Well,
I don't live in Georgetown.
Well, our good friend Mr. 007 just had indicated that to us today, so that's why. Mr. 007, James Bond.
Oh, well, he's probably out there and he knows. I will suggest you take his word rather than mine, who is nowhere close.
Okay. Back to the elections topic. If the Elections Commission, and I had asked you this some time back, if the Elections Commission comes forward with and they're saying we don't think these results should be accepted at this point in time because if I'm to be corrected here again, the court gave the decision back to the Elections Commission whether or not they can decide on fresh elections or not. If they decide fresh elections, is that something you would agree with and the coalition would agree with?
Well, there has been the argument for nullification and fresh elections. Legally, I don't know where that stands. As I understand it, what the court rule is that you have to go and deal with this matter based on the valid, credible votes. And if that is done, I will understand. If it arrives at the point where there is nullification of the elections, I don't want to say that because as a party, we haven't discussed that. We knew it's a possibility and an option. And so I would say we would look at the process and do what is best for the people of Guyana. If nullification of the elections and preparation for a new election is what is best for the people of Guyana, we're disposed to do it. But we are not obsessed with political power for just political party sake. We have been, in the last 5 years, working to deliver goods and services to the people of Guyana. We campaign on a track record of bringing back law and order and stability to Guyana, and we will do anything that is legal and in the interest of the people of Guyana.
Okay, with all of this being said, how quickly can we see, maybe after elections, this might be out of your hand or out of your remit, but how quickly can we see the Elections Commission actually begin the process? Let's say if a result is announced at the end of August, that we can see the whole process beginning to revamp the electoral list and the way elections is operated and is carried out in Guyana.
I think once there's a declaration and we're in government, very early we will move to deal with these issues. I remind you that we started dealing with it and it's the courts that stopped us from dealing with it. We believe it's a priority. We believe that we cannot go to election and every time have to be worried about a list and that kind of thing. So I believe we will hurtle to deal with this question and to deal with it in a comprehensive way, cognizant that the most important thing is the promotion and protection of the interests of the people of Guyana.
Okay, and there's also some confusion, and I don't know if it's something that the party supports, but do you support overseas voters returning home to vote?
In the present context, as an individual, I would say no. Look, we have seen in this election that we were just dealing with people at home and what Mercury Public Affairs did in terms of producing misinformation, creating tensions, etc. I believe not only Guyana, but the Caribbean has to now sit down and look at the new dynamics of elections in the context of a technological world in which money and power can virtually determine an election without coming to the territory. That, to me, portends what we do not want. You are looking at a situation in which elections could become not the will of the people, but the will of money, the corrupt, and powers who have vested interests and care little about the people in the country. And so this, to me, is another deep-rooted problem that we have to solve. If you can compromise a powerful country like the United States electoral process, think of what can be done to a small Guyana, a small St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a small St. Kitts Nevis. And so I believe the time has come when Caribbean leaders will have to engage each other, both leaders and opposition leaders, government and opposition, into how do we deal with this, what I will call new type of intervention in which the physical person doesn't have to come and intervene. They can use technology and other elements at their disposal and jettison the will of the people. That is the critical question I think we have to face going forward.
Okay.
If in your country...
Mr. Norton, just quickly, I have a caller on the line who wants to ask you a question. Caller, good morning. Go ahead. Sorry, caller, go ahead.
Okay. Good day. Just some questions that I needed to ask. It was mentioned that the underlying problem in Ghana is the racial element. That's correct?
Ethnic insecurity.
Yeah. I would like to know exactly why this is such an important feature in Guyana, given that a similar racial composition exists in Trinidad, and they don't seem to have that problem. In Guyana, I think it's 36 Indian, 34 African, and the rest mixed and indigenous. And in Trinidad, it's pretty much similar. I mean, do the mixed or Douglas population vote with the Africans generally, or are they split equally? And this contributes to the closeness of the election, because maybe that is the real crux of the problem, the fact that the elections were close, so a few votes can swing the election one way or the other. Okay? It seems, and one of the things that I find interesting too is that Ghana has this proportional representative system, okay, as well as an independent GCOM. And we would have thought that those, when compared to other places in the Caribbean, for instance, that don't have those things, they would kind of temper the kind of tribalism, because that's what we have here. We don't have racial or ethnic divide, but we have a tribalistic one, okay? And, you know, we don't have independent electoral, or some of the islands at least, don't have independent electoral systems, okay? So it's somewhat disappointing that Guyana has all those things, but yet we still seem to have this stalemate. Okay, so I just wonder
Well,
if the commission is compromised, or the government system generally needs a shake-up.
Well, Ghana is a very complex place. If you understand the geography in Guyana, if you understand that there was a time in Guyana when we ended up in ethnic conflict, and you have communities that are virtually one ethnic group, and political parties can go in, and this is common among our opposition, they go to what they call bottom house meetings, and they incite these divisions. Now, that generates problems. There is also the wider problem of when the People's Progressive Party is in power. History has shown that they have discriminated. And what that does is create a situation where the African Guyanese community and the supporters of the APNU-AFC feel marginalized. And once the APNU-AFC came to power, from day one, the People's Progressive Party peddled that we will operate for one ethnic group, and we didn't. If you travel Guyana, you will see we did work in all communities, but yet it was peddled among the Indo-Guyanese community that we were operating in the interest of one ethnic group. The evidence will prove to the contrary. But a lot of times in politics, what matters is perception. And when you have a company like Mercury working for you, you can create a perception and create your own reality, which has happened in the Guyanese context. And so I believe we have to find a system in which all the ethnic groups in this country feel comfortable and feel that they are part of the decision-making process. We have the Amerindian community, which is predominantly in the interior area, and political parties will campaign with them, and they become a kind of a balance of power. But the core ethnic securities in the society, they still exist. And I think we have, as politicians, will have to come together to deal with it. I don't know if you saw the Analytica expose, but one of the things that was pointed out in that expose was that when Analytica and Mercury, they did this study in Trinidad, which they also applied to Ghana, they concluded that in the Indian community, the Indian youth tend to accept what their parents said. But in the African community, they are prepared to step out and challenge. And so what they did was to feed the African community a narrative that caused them to believe that they can vote against the governing political party in both countries. And so I'm saying to you that there are a plethora of issues that have got to be addressed. Guyana and Trinidad have similarities, but they are not the same.
How does what role does, okay, let me put this question this way. We saw in 2015 there was an issue with regards to the time frame in which the results came in. It's probably a week at most it took. Then we saw slightly a similar thing here. It probably took a few days. What mechanism is being considered to have the results within a speedy time, especially with the results coming out from those rural hinterland areas?
That is an issue that I would not seek to address now. We have to, in government, look at it and put mechanisms in place. But you see, you have to understand, results coming from an area speedily is one thing. Results coming from an area that is credible is another. And the issue we have to deal here with is credibility. You can have votes in a box, you can transmit it, but you wouldn't know what level of illegality would have occurred unless you have mechanisms to check. Ghana elections, when it is over, it appears to the eyes to be free and fair. The minute you start to see the numbers and delve into it, you start to see the discrepancies. We need to do a comprehensive review and find mechanisms to deal with our process. Take presiding officers. Presiding officers come from communities and they have political positions. Unless you have mechanisms to stop them from being involved in electoral fraud, we will have problems. And that is why I say there are complex issues to be dealt with, and we shouldn't treat them as if we can just make a coat of paint, they're covered and it's over. We have to delve into them and find novel ways of dealing with election day staff, the election commission, etc.
I know you mentioned about the whole fraud and the possibility of stuff being hacked, but is there any consideration? Because I know when then Minister of Technology, Cathy Hughes, was up here for a conference, I interviewed her. She basically outlined that a lot of the areas, especially those hinterland areas, were being outfitted with internet. How much of an importance is it being considered for the use of technology in those specific areas? When the results come out to tongue, maybe you give it another few days to verify whether or not it's credible. But at the end of the day, you have a preliminary result to go with.
Again, you have to look at Guyana. Technology doesn't operate independent of people. We have had in the last election an attempt by the then government to rig technologically. And we only got out of it because the election commission took a decision that all of those would be set aside and we will do a manual count. Anybody who knows technology will know that you can compromise it. And it is compromised by human beings. And so the mere introduction of technology will not deal with the human resource problem, the human resource element. So technology can play its role. We believe, and we have been providing internet across the country, but we shouldn't arrive at the conclusion that the person transmitting the information will just transmit it as it should be. I am no technological specialist, but I understand the basics, and I have seen cases where you can put in data, and how you handle it, what comes out, is another story.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Norton, I have a caller who, sorry to interject, but I have a caller who wants to ask you a question. Caller, good morning. Go ahead.
Oh, good morning. Is it the system is bad, or the persons who are working the system is not really working the system correctly? Also, do you understand the question clearly?
You're asking me if it's the system that is bad or the people in the system?
Right, because you have a system, but is it the people? Because it's not just in the Caribbean or in Guyana.
We have both.
If you check, even in the US where they have the system, it was like the system is the people working the system. The other question is it that
could you speak louder?
Is it that it boils down to party lines, or the persons want to win at all costs and therefore they find any means?
I am not
to,
getting you clear at all.
Is it possible? Is it that the persons who are up for election want to win at any cost, so therefore they will divide even brother and sister, and therefore the ethnicity or the divisions in the country, whether rich or poor, and they use that to get what they want?
Could the moderator?
Okay, what he's saying is it a case that the parties want to win at all costs, that they will do anything to divide, whether it be family members or anything of that nature?
All right, I will put it this way. I believe all political parties seek political power. I do not believe that all political parties necessarily want to win at all costs. But what you have is a situation where you have systemic problems and you have cases where human beings are compromised, and many of them want to see their political party in power. And that can lead to compromising of the system. And that is why, as I speak, I'm saying to you, it has to be resolved involving all of the political forces. Add to that these elections took on another dimension because oil was discovered. And you know that it is the state that allocate the resources. And this question of state allocation of resources came to the fore and made the elections more competitive and made the elections very, very critical.
Okay, I have a blunt question to ask before I let you go, Mr. Norton. Realistically, when can the people, because somebody literally asked me this question yesterday afternoon, just after the decision came out. They met me on the road, and the question is, realistically, when will a result and when will this process be over with?
I am hoping that in a week it will be over with. But politics is a dynamic thing. And I am premising what I'm saying on the fact that we have a ruling, that the CCJ is not likely to become involved because of the law. And if that is the case, it should, in a week's time, be resolved. However, having said that, I can only tell you what appears to be the reality. Political forces in the country will make their decision, and then we will know where it will go.
Okay, so realistically, another week, 2 weeks thereabout, basically to get this over with. Well, Mr. Norton, thanks for joining us this morning here on Voices. I know a lot of the Guyanese community out here would appreciate getting a response in terms of what it is like down in Guyana right now, in terms of the electoral process as well as what the court decision meant.
Thanks for having me. And just to point out to the Guyanese, as a party, even with all we've been going through, we have consistently said to the people of Guyana, be calm, avoid protests, and just stay focused. We did that.
Okay, well, there you had it. That was Mr. Norton giving us his views, and that in terms of what happened, what transpired yesterday in the court, in terms of the outcome and where he thinks this process will go. As he indicated, the PVP has moved to the CCJ to file an injunction thereabout. But realistically, how that is going to play out, we'll have to see. But that was APNU AFC's representative, Aubrey Norton, there, giving us an overview of things down in Guyana. Well, we'll take a quick break, pay some bills, and then we'll come right back as we prepare for the midday news here on WinFM 98.9.
Found the sound 98.9 WinFM.
Quicks, cleans many dishes and many more.
Quicks cleans many dishes and many more.
Yes, Quicks cleans many dishes and many more.
Just one spoonful of concentrated Quicks cleans your whole sink full of dishes. Quicks clean.
Quicks cleans many dishes and many more.
Quicks, we wash more dishes.
Like us on Facebook, www.facebook.com/ramsupermarket. Follow us on Twitter, www.twitter.com/ramsupermarket. And subscribe to us on YouTube, www.youtube.com/ramsupermarket.
Flo's new combo plan, the people's plan.
Combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow.
I want a combo, but not for my belly. I feel me cell phone, so me call anybody. Call Mr. Man, call Granny. On the island, Flow, come boom.
Yes, there is no need for to force no more. Cause it Flow combo plan, you're paying less for more.
Flow got a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow.
Dial star 129 number sign to activate your combo plan today.
Welcome back to Voices for Today. I'm your host, Jermaine Abel. Well, you heard a bit there from what is transpiring down in Guyana in the never-ending process following the elections on March 2nd. We had a representative there just giving us an overview. But it's interesting that 3 months, 2 months, and a few weeks after, there's still no result. The matter went to the Court of Appeal on Thursday, Friday, and then they had a speedy result on Monday, yesterday afternoon, where the Court of Appeal just gave its overview in terms of the process. Basically, to sum it all up, the process has been handed back to the Elections Commission to make a determination on the way forward with that in terms of credible vote. The appeals court, in essence, said it's up to the Elections Commission down there to determine the term credible votes, and only credible votes can be pointed out or determine the elections down there. But nevertheless, that's the way the matter is in terms of Guyana's elections. And at this point in time, we'll break to bring you the headline news now here on Win FM. Yes, we'll take a quick break and we'll bring you Voices here on Win. We bring you the headline news, and we go right to that now.
You found the sound. 98.9. Win FM.
We now bring you the Win FM headline news. The Win FM headline news is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, KDP Enterprises, The Grange, Carib Brewery, CNC Trading.
Without limits, happy and free. The skin you're in with no apology. The one to seize the day. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. With LLB. Live, love, be. Live, love, be. Be who you know you can be. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. Angostura, lemon, lime, and bitters. Live, love, be.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world. Whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous, you can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air. We get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises, telephone number 466-9595.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Daily low with a low reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business, property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we've got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. Dealey Walwyn, people you can trust.
Health officials in the region say they are worried over what they are describing as unhealthy air quality levels because of the vast cloud of Sahara dust blanketing the Caribbean. The air quality in St. Kitts and Nevis and other parts of the region fell to record hazardous levels, according to the experts. People across the region are being warned to stay indoors and use air filters if they have one. Eye care professional Dr. Julia Bird is one of those speaking about the impact of the current conditions, particularly on eye health. She explains what concerns the most in relation to eye care.
Well, it's such a peculiar combination of circumstances, and in my lifetime anyway, the dust has to be the worst I've ever experienced. And because of the COVID-19 shutdown and the knowledge that, there's a conjunctivitis associated with it, I am seeing with the virus, I'm seeing a heightened anxiety with people not being able to differentiate between, is this COVID-19 conjunctivitis or is this the dust? And also people touching their eyes more because of the discomfort and the grit and the foreign body sensation.
Mm-hmm.
So and then the third, this is our typical allergy season also from pollen. Beginning about February or so, we usually see a surge in children coming into the office with irritated eyes. So put all of that together and then put the actual shutdown where we have, a swarm of new farmers. Everybody is into backyard gardening. Toddlers are doing backyard gardening. And so having their eyes exposed more to not just Sahara dust, but everything else that goes with the backyard gardening, the pollen, the fertilizers, the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a difficult period for eyes. And I'm just appealing to people to try to use over-the-counter lubricants, cold compresses, try and keep the little ones indoors as much as possible.
Keep your hands out of your eyes, the Antiguan doctor advises. She says distractions are helpful depending on the kind of distraction.
Please don't let the distraction be a device, cell phone, because I'm also seeing a surge in eyelid complications like styes and eyelid bumps, congested lids. Our lids are filled with oil glands called meibomian glands. And for the first time ever, I'm seeing every single day a presentation of a sty on an eyelid. And people don't realize that when you're staring at a device, which we're all doing now as we upload COVID stats, you don't blink. The blink rate drops. And, there's studies that show this. You put a video camera on a wall and videotape a computer user. You can't blink if you're going to keep that line of zeros aligned. Say bank work.
Right.
And, all the bankers are doing at-home online work now. So, it's complicated. People have to practice blinking more if you're going to be sitting on a device to do school or office.
Dr. Bird was speaking to Observer Radio. Like the Antiguan health specialist, many of her colleagues around the region are concerned about those battling respiratory symptoms tied to COVID-19. Pablo Mendez Lazaro, an environmental health specialist with the University of Puerto Rico, says this is the most significant in the past 50 years. He says conditions are dangerous in many Caribbean islands. Lazaro, who is working with NASA to develop an alert system for the arrival of Sahara dust, said the concentration was so high in recent days that it could even have adverse effects on healthy people.
Police, soldiers, and members of the Immigration Department on Monday descended on a location in Keys Village and removed a group of people believed to be illegal immigrants. Reports and photos surfaced showing the group of about 10 people being taken into custody by the police and army. Media reports suggest that 3 persons have escaped and are currently on the run. Efforts to reach the chief immigration officer proved unsuccessful up to news time Monday.
Antigua and Barbuda's Gaston Brown is apparently fed up with some sister islands in the OECS comparing their economies to that of his country. Speaking on Point FM Saturday, the radio station he reportedly owns, Prime Minister Brown suggested that Antigua and Barbuda can hold its own and is in better position than many of the others. Brown took aim at those he said were bragging about their spending in the region.
When you look, for example, at those who bragging about their spending within the region, look at our situation. Some of them get a little CIP largest and they're trying to puff up the chest as though they're doing such a great job. But I can say definitively that we have created greater value in our economy and outperformed them in terms of frugal spending. When you look at the optimization of government investment spending and the creation of high value added institutions, no, none of them in the OECS can match us, none. And let me just remind the people of Antigua and Barbuda that we grew this country's economy by an average of 5% per annum. Remember I said, the country, all institutions are virtually bankrupted. Notwithstanding, we not only stabilized the country's economy, but literally transformed it into the best performing economy in the OECS for the last 6 years. No other country can boast that. We kept expenditure to GDP under 20% of GDP. You look at some of them expenditure, especially some of them who have a few CIP dollars, it's like 37% and so on. We reduced the debt to GDP from 104% down to 69% within a 5.5-year period.
The Antiguan leader said his administration was concentrating on engaging in meaningful investments. Brown said those contending that his government is not saving should take a look at the kind of investments it has.
Because if push comes to shove and we have to sell some of these assets, we can raise hundreds of millions of dollars. Let me give some example. Our 51% share in West Indies Oil Company is valued at $150 million. I want to repeat. The government of Antigua and Barbuda's share, or 51% equity in West Indies Oil Company, is valued at $150 million. We can sell that tomorrow and raise $150 million. You have the car park that is valued about $40 million, owned exclusively by the government of Antigua and Barbuda through NAMCO. You have Blue Ocean, in which we just invested some money. It's a dredging company, valued at $10 million. And that $10 million in terms of revenue will be bringing the government a sustainable amount of revenue over a period of time, because they're now getting into offshore sand mining and so on, and to create a sand mining industry for exportation. You have Jolly Beach. We have $50 million in equity in Jolly Beach. And whereas we're investing all of these investments in NAMCO, NAMCO on its own has receivables and cash totaling about $40 million. So, for example, NAMCO was able to invest $25 million in cash in the fifth berth, the Oasis class berth that we're building now. So Global Ports owes NAMCO $25 million, which they have to pay back every year, I think over a period of about maybe 5 years. Then you have Caribbean Union Bank. Our investment in Caribbean Union Bank is $40 million. You're looking at total investments here of about $335 million. Those are things that my government invested in.
Prime Minister Brown acknowledged that his government doesn't have any surplus, but he touted the investments made as the way to go.
It is true that in terms of overall tax revenue, that we had a little issue in terms of generating enough taxes to cover all the debts and so on that were created. It is true. So we never had any surplus. Even with the CIP money, it wasn't even sufficient to cover all the debts. But what we did do is that we have been literally scaling up our investments. So monies that NAMCO gets, for example, from West Indies Oil Company in the form of dividends on an annual basis, those are reinvested. And let us not forget, too, that many of these investments, they're bringing dividends. We haven't really gotten a dividend from CUB as yet, but CUB turned a profit during the last financial year of $4 million, 80% of which is government profits. We haven't decided on a dividend pay as yet, but if you were to give all of the profits in the form of dividends, that's over $3 million. So what we have done, instead of, let's say, saving $150 million in cash and then spending it off, we are building institutions because we're in this for the long run. We're not about spending money on a short-term basis to get votes. We're about investing, building a strong equity position for the government and people of Antigua and Barbuda to get sustainable revenues. And at the end of the day, the people of Antigua and Barbuda will see the wisdom in our position.
Prime Minister Brown did not mention any country by name this time. However, in an earlier statement, he'd criticized Prime Minister Timothy Harris and his deputy Sean Richards for boasting that St. Kitts and Nevis was doing much better than many of the neighboring countries, including Antigua and Barbuda.
PBCJ, I'm Gabrielle Thompson. Just over 300 Jamaican ship workers disembarked Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Sea and the Disney Wonder on Saturday. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of National Security, Senator Matthew Samuda, was on location and noted the swift disembarkation process. The workers were granted entry into the island through the government's controlled re-entry program. Labeling their efforts as Herculean, Senator Samuda praised the efforts of the multiple agencies on location.
The personnel here is a multi-agency, it's a multi-agency effort, right? So I mean, you have the usual travel process as facilitated by Pecan Customs is underway, but then you have a Herculean effort from the team from the JDF, the team from the Public Health Department of the Ministry of Health. You have JDF, JCF, Port Security. You have supporting cast from JUTC, you have the Port Authority. You know, it's a Herculean effort to really ensure that health protocols are adhered to. So, you know, we're happy with the effort so far, and we really appreciate the team.
Mr. Samuda says the swift processing period is as a result of previous experience.
Well, you know, practice makes perfect, right? So this is one of several sets that you've managed to process. So we have gotten better, but the improvements are also based on the improvements in the very system. So we've invested in automating much of the process. So a lot of the questions and answers come before persons come. So when they come, it's more verification as opposed to data entry, which makes a huge difference. Parts of it also, as it relates to geofencing, in cases like this where persons will be with government quarantine for a day or two as they wait their results, we can take our time to do the geofencing part of the space rather than have them wait here for that. So you've learned lessons, certainly from the first sets, and we're happy with the process so far.
And acknowledging issues with previous efforts to repatriate Jamaicans, Mr. Samuda outlined steps being taken to avoid any repetition of this.
Look, you're dealing with thousands of persons returning to Jamaica with new processes that didn't exist 2 months ago. You are going to have some issues. There's no new system that is ever implemented without some issues. What I'd say is those issues are behind us. What we continue to do is to review the process virtually every single day with the teams from all the agencies I would have listed previously. And we continue to improve on the systems. Now, even with the persons who have had data issues on their phones, for the ones that we geofence, both Flow and Digicel have come in and have offered supporting packages to help persons for the 14-day period. So, you know, it's private, public, but generally I think we're getting much better at it. And we have to get better at it because Jamaica depends on travel. And these processes are a part of the new normal.
And healthcare workers were on location to explain the process fully.
For 14 days, stand on your yard. Means that you're not going to go through the gate. You can walk up and down anywhere you want and you come down because that's where you live. But not through the gate. If you need something at the store, ask somebody to get it for you. Don't entertain anybody for those 14 days. Because we do not want, because at the end of the 14 days, you will be tested again. And we want to make sure that everything is okay before the oven and the kiss up and all of those things start taking place. Because when you leave here today, everybody going to a government facility. If the results are positive, you are going to be remaining in the government facility and you are going to be given treatment and you will not be allowed to go home until after you have got 2 negative test results. You have to keep in mind that some person's body will respond faster to the medication than on some other person.
For the news on PBCJ, I'm Gabrielle Thompson.
Odette Campbell, GBN News. Hotels are among businesses hardest hit. The main worry is about their staff, says CEO of the Grenada Hotel Association, Arlene Friday.
Many businesses, have worked with their staff for years and years, and we're concerned how our staff will manage over the next few months.
The entertainment industry, which depends on a critical mass of people gathered in one space, is also on the hit list of the coronavirus. Entrepreneur Godfrey Augustine produces the annual Legends in Concert Calypso show, which is usually held in July. That, by all indications, is on pause. He cites the biblical tale of Pharaoh's dream as a guiding principle for businesses as they maneuver their way through this period of uncertainty.
You will remember the story of
of Jacob's son in Egypt. When Pharaoh got the dream and he got Joseph to explain it to him with the 7 years of farming and the 7 years of plenty. And they were able to handle it because during the years of plenty, they had a lot of reserve. And we have to follow things like that and pay attention to things like that. So when things sort of level off and when we get through this, we can be in a good position to continue providing the services that we provide.
The Caribbean Development Bank has hosted a resilience series to help businesses map their new course on the now coronavirus interrupted path. Ron Johnson is director of the Blueprint Creative in Barbados and has been one of the participants in the series. He says many may look to the government for sustenance, but it's not a good bet at this time.
It's really up to businesses first and foremost to tighten their shoelaces and outrun the bear. At the end of the day, there are going to be some breakout businesses that it will be in the interest of governments to support. But I don't think that any of the Caribbean governments right now have the resources to back all businesses. Like I said just now, even in good economies, businesses fail. It's just that right now we're experiencing something that has been uncharted. And yes, we would like government support, but at the same time, we can't relinquish our responsibility as entrepreneurs and business people to run good businesses and come up with these paradigm-shifting ideas.
The consensus among some business leaders is that they would be treading in some uncharted waters for quite a while with the hope that they do not go under. If and when they do get to the other side, how should they approach a new phase of their business lives?
We have to be mindful, though, that when this time comes, we have to be able to manage very well, that we don't take it for granted. We don't get all caught up if we see a little revenue trickling in. We have to continue to manage well so that, things go good.
While they ride it out, their anchor may just have to be one coated with faith that the world economy rebounds quickly.
Now, Yemen's Houthi rebels say they've launched their biggest ever military operation against Saudi Arabia. 8 drones and 3 ballistic missiles have been fired towards Saudi Arabia since Monday. The Houthis say they plan to launch more. The Saudi coalition fighting in Yemen says it intercepted a ballistic missile headed towards Riyadh. The coalition spokesman says the attack was launched from the Yemeni capital Sana'a towards civilian targets in the kingdom. Let's bring in Ma'moon Abu Nawar. He's a retired Jordanian Air Force general. Good to have you with us. So first of all, do we know, is there any evidence to establish how successful a strike this was? Did the missiles and drones hit their targets or not?
It's very difficult to tell. We need some more information, the wreckage, so it would be difficult. But reaching Riyadh with that accuracy and the planning to hit that Ministry of Defense and some other military airport, that's a big escalation, I could think, because the Houthi now is winning on the ground in Jawf and some part of Yemen. So yes, it makes the Saudi insecure, unstable for any investment in the future. And it's a big threat for the Saudi air defense system, which I feel it's a bit weak to intercept such missiles. They need the THAAD system, which they intercept beyond the atmosphere, etc.
If I could jump in, Abu Nawar, tell us why you think the Saudi air defense system is weak here, because, of course, the Saudi narrative is that they intercepted and shot down these missiles and drones.
Most of air defense system around the world, even the percentage of hitting these targets is like 20% or so. So that's why the ballistic missile normally reach. And normally when this missile enter the atmosphere, the warhead and the body is separated from each other. So it's very hard to hit or to treat such an attack. And the Saudi need the THAAD system and the early warning and the area is so vast, so need more radars, etc. That's why they asked the American to help them out last 2-3 months, if you remember, Sammy.
Right.
So it's going to be...
it's going to be a tough one. But how unprecedented was the number of missiles and drones? And again, there are kind of two claims and counterclaims about how many missiles and drones were launched.
Well, I don't have enough info, but I think as the news, we hear the news that's like 4 missiles and some 8 drones and some crews even. So, but what's notable here is they attack a military target, not civilian ones. But they have the accuracy and they have the range. If you remember with some of the 3 drones, they hit Abu Dhabi, Bqayq and Quraysh, Aramco, etc. So they have this edge, and they change the balance or the tie of the war concerning the Emirates and the Saudi. But it's amazing why they are not treating the Emirati the same, launching such thing. I think the Emirati there, through the Iranian, they ask not to be hit or something like that. So I'm not sure about that.
That segues nicely into my question about what does this strike tell us about the Houthis' technological capabilities? Because as you said, I mean, we're talking about the people who, emerged from mountains around Sana'a. Now, apparently or allegedly, according to their claims, they're targeting ministries in Riyadh on the other side of the Arabian Peninsula.
Yes. I think they have the edge. I said they changed the type of the war. They weaponize the drones. They have the ballistic, and they have also the cruise missile, which is very effective, very hard to hit these cruise missile. So they are a big threat to the Saudi, yes, and they can hit anywhere in Saudi or Emirates. Even they can reach Israel, I could say now. So that's what's happening in Yemen. It's a full of chaos there. I think the best way to solve the Yemeni thing is to Saudi and the Emiratis should withdraw from Yemen at all. They paid billions of dollars and see what's happening now in South Yemen. And I don't think they will leave such way because they need Socotra, who controls Socotra. They control the 7 seas in the world, etc. And they need the port, all these facilities. So I don't think they will leave Yemen very soon. So they invested in billions of dollars, and they need some return for that, and that's what they're looking for.
That was the WinFM Headline News, brought to you by KDP Enterprises, Caribbean Alliance, Carib Brewery, CNC Trading, The Grange.
Protect your lifestyle with Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Tilly Wall with a low reputation and service for second to none. Securing you is our mission. People that you can trust, your business, property, we got you covered. Motor or personal, whatever it is, we got you covered. 130 years in this business, we got you covered. For all your insurance needs, visit or call us at 465-2631 or 469-5303. Dealey Walwyn, people you can trust.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts, offering 24-hour nursing, therapeutic, and residential care for older adults? It's situated at Otley, 7 miles east of Vastair in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodation to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020, fax 466-8221, or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects or sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Shipping your cargo shouldn't be a hassle. It can be as easy as a single call to Amerijet International, your worldwide cargo transportation solution. We provide all the services you need to ship your goods anywhere in the world. Whether your shipment is fresh, frozen, large or small, alive or hazardous, you can count on Amerijet to deliver it safe and sound. Amerijet International, by land, sea or air. We get it there. For more information, visit us online at www.amerijet.com or call us at KDP Enterprises, telephone number 466-9595.
Without limits, happy and free. The skin you're in with no apology. The one to seize the day. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. With LLB. Live, love, be. Live, love, be. Be who you know you can be. Grab an LLB. Live, love, be. Angostura, lemon, lime, and bitters. Live, love, be.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
When is the last time that you've had lunch or dinner away from home? The ambience of Sweet Cane on Port Zante provides you with that touch. Sweet Cane daily specials include burgers, wraps, soup, and tasty seafood dishes. Sweet Cane also caters for events and special parties. Call our Sweet Cane hotline at 465-4345 or 665-7628. Sweet Cane, they've got the touch.
This is your local weather forecast brought to you by Sweet Cane. Your local weather forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis, valid up to 8 a.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, 24th June. Synopsis: a relatively dry and stable air mass is the dominant feature, keeping the chances low for cloudiness and showers for the islands for the next 24 hours. Today's weather, partly cloudy and hazy with a 20% or slight chance of showers. Tonight's weather, partly cloudy and hazy with a 20% or slight chance of showers. Winds are east at 15 to 28 kilometers or 8 to 15 knots. Seas 1.5 meters or 5 feet. Today's sunset, 6:48 p.m. Tomorrow's sunrise, 5:39 a.m. This has been your local weather forecast, valid up to 8 a.m. tomorrow. Brought to you by Sweet Cane.
When is the last time that you've had lunch or dinner away from home? The ambience of Sweet Cane on Port Zante provides you with that touch. Sweet Cane daily specials include burgers, wraps, soup, and tasty seafood dishes. Sweet Cane also caters for events and special parties. Call our Sweet Cane hotline at 465-4345 or 665-7628. Sweet Cane, they've got the touch.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9 Win FM.
That theme never gets old. It never gets old. Well, welcome back to Voices. This is the second half of the program. I'm your host, Jermaine Abel. And during the first half, or the first hour of the program, we discussed the latest in terms of elections there in Guyana. Well, during the second half, it's an open mic. We'll be looking a bit at the Sahara dust. You can just give us a call, anything of interest to you, any topic that you want to raise. But during the second hour, we'll be discussing some of what we've been seeing over the last couple of days. We'll hear from a doctor out of Trinidad, out of Antigua, who's giving her a synopsis of the Sahara dust that's passing currently. But before we do jump into the discussions, we have to acknowledge our partners, Flow and Hosfords and Company Limited.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Hosfords. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Hosfords Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Yes, pay zero VAT and get up to $30,000 off on top of that. This has never been seen before. Unprecedented savings at the Unprecedented Auto Sales Event at Hosfords Automotive. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Let me repeat, up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Don't miss this, it's unprecedented. Terms and conditions apply.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 30 days of unlimited social messaging, 10 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, and 1,000 local anywhere calls and texts with the always-on prepaid plan, all for $100. Keep your number when you switch to St. Kitts' most reliable LTE network. Switch to Flow. It only gets better. Welcome back to Voices, the second hour of the program. It's just about 20 minutes to the hour of 1 o'clock here in the studios of Win FM. As I said, we'll be looking at the Sahara dust and its effect on the lives of citizens and residents here in St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as those around the region, because it's now heading, Jamaica has also issued a warning to its citizens and residents about, health officials would have done that rather, about the impact of the Sahara dust. Well, yesterday, the Ministry of Health issued a statement surrounding the Sahara dust. And it goes, based on information from the St. Kitts Meteorological Services, the Federation is presently being affected by a plume of Saharan dust that is making its way across the Caribbean. This mass of very dusty air was formed over the Sahara Desert on the west coast of Africa and was transported by easterly trade winds westward across the northern Atlantic to the Lesser Antilles. This is a regular phenomenon that occurs between March to September each year. This Saharan air layer cell will impact the Federation in the following two ways. One, a difference in the sky. The blanket of tiny dust particles creates a hazy sky. We are informed that it will be most dense today, which was yesterday, June 22nd, 2020. The dust particles also contribute to spectacular sunrises and sunsets that can be observed in the Caribbean islands, South Florida, and the U.S. Gulf Coast. And two, increase in complaints related to allergies. This increase in airborne particles and dust can be irritating for individuals already diagnosed with allergies and respiratory conditions like asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. Persons can experience the following symptoms when outdoors and exposed to the pollutants. 1. Itchy eyes. 2. Burning eyes. 3. Runny nose. 4. Sneezing. And, if asthmatic, can experience chest tightness and even wheezing. Such individuals may have to seek medical care. Yes, that's part of what the Ministry of Health would have said. The Ministry of Health also recommends that persons with respiratory conditions and allergies should remain indoors as much as possible, while outdoors, the wearing of a face mask will be beneficial as it will protect you from inhaling the pollutants and dust particles. Respiratory hygiene is an imperative at this time. Remember to use a disposable tissue when coughing and sneezing. Keep hands out of your face and wash hands regularly with soap and water, or use an appropriate hand sanitizer. On the flip side to that, there is at least one positive effect of the Sahara dust. The Saharan air layer generally suppresses tropical cyclone or hurricane formation in the Atlantic. Again, the Ministry of Health recommends that during the passage of this massive Saharan plume, persons remain indoors as much as possible. This is particularly advised for persons already diagnosed with allergies and chronic lung conditions like asthma. It is further recommended that if you must go outside, you can wear a face mask to protect yourselves from the dust and pollutants. Please remain safe. Please remain safe as the Saharan dust plume makes its way across the Federation en route to the U.S. Gulf Coast. Well, at this point, we'll take a quick break, acknowledge our partners, Flo and Horsford and Company Limited, and we'll come back and hear from one doctor about the Sahara dust and the plume and the effects it can have on persons with respiratory ailments.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Horseman's. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Yes, pay zero VAT and get up to $30,000 off on top of that. This has never been seen before. Unprecedented savings at the Unprecedented Auto Sales Event at Horswoods Automotive. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Let me repeat, up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Don't miss this. It's unprecedented. Terms and conditions apply.
Flo's new combo plan, the people's plan. Combo. Sometimes a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flo.
I want a combo, but not for my belly. I feel me cell phone, so me call anybody. Call Mr. Man, call Granny. On the island, Flo, come combo me.
Yes, there is no need for two phones no more. Cause with Flo combo plan, you're paying less for more.
Flo got a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flo.
Dial star 129 number sign to activate your combo plan today.
Welcome back to Voices. As I said before we took the break, we'll be focusing on the Sahara dust that's affecting St. Kitts and Nevis as well as the rest of the Caribbean. Well, we hear from Dr. Julia Bird. This interview is compliments of our good friends over at Observer Radio. Darren Matthew Ward spoke to Dr. Bird this morning, and she basically outlined some of the implications and what people should be doing to protect themselves against any respiratory challenges during this specific period of the passage of the Sahara dust. You would have heard a bit of it this in the headline news a little while ago, but we'll hear the full interview concerning that specific area.
This is Observer AM, and I dare say it's a very hazy Antigua and Barbuda. That has been the case for the last 48 hours or so, give or take. And conditions, of course, deteriorated over the latter part of the weekend. And today, according to the latest alert sent out by the CapCap app, which is something that was referred to us by our friends at the NODS, the Saharan Dust Quality Bulletin says that the air quality is at unhealthy levels for all. So they're not even referring to unhealthy levels those who may have respiratory conditions. But essentially, if you don't have to be outside, you really should not be outside. That's the guidance being given by the CapCap app, and that's something that's available on both your Android and iOS app stores. Dr. Julia Bird joins us on the line to speak about the impacts of the current conditions, particularly on our eye health. And that is certainly something that will affect all of us. Good morning, Dr. Bird. Thank you so much for making yourself available this morning. We appreciate it.
Good morning, Darren. Thanks for asking me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Our pleasure. Well, as far as the current situation is concerned, what concerns you most as an eye care professional as it relates to the potential for trouble?
Well, it's such a peculiar combination of circumstances, and in my lifetime anyway, the dust has to be the worst I've ever experienced. And because of the COVID-19 shutdown and the knowledge that, there's a conjunctivitis associated with it, I am seeing with the virus, I'm seeing a heightened anxiety with people not being able to differentiate between, is this COVID-19 conjunctivitis or is this the dust? and also people touching their eyes more because of the discomfort and the grit and the foreign body sensation.
Mm-hmm.
So and then the third, this is our typical allergy season also from pollen. Beginning about February or so, we usually see a surge in children coming into the office with irritated eyes. So put all of that together, and then put the actual shutdown where we have, a swarm of new farmers. Everybody is into backyard gardening. Toddlers are doing backyard gardening. And so having their eyes exposed more to not just Sahara dust, but everything else that goes with the backyard gardening, the pollen, the fertilizers, the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a difficult period
Yeah.
for eyes. And I'm just appealing to people to try to use over-the-counter lubricants, which are actually in short supply right now, I'll say. Cold compresses, try and keep the little ones indoors as much as possible, as well as the older people, because of the chest complications and so on. And let's just ride it out. Keep your hands out of your eyes.
It's not easy for us. Well, I'm Exhibit A. Not easy for us adults. Never mind children. How do you do that? I don't know. Distractions?
Yeah, it's hard. It's very, very hard. Distraction. And please don't let the distraction be a device, a cell phone, because the other thing I mentioned to you yesterday when we first started talking about this,
yes.
I'm also seeing a surge in eyelid complications like styes and eyelid bumps, congested lids. Our lids are filled with oil glands called meibomian glands. And for the first time ever, I'm seeing every single day a presentation of a stye on an eyelid. And people don't realize that when you're staring at a device, which we're all doing now as we upload COVID stats at night in our beds, you don't blink. The blink rate drops. And, there's studies that show this. You put a video camera on a wall and videotape a computer user. You can't blink if you're going to keep that line of zeros aligned. in, say, bank work.
Right.
And, all the bankers are doing at-home online work now. So, it's complicated.
Yes, apparently so.
People have to practice blinking more if you're going to be sitting on a device to do school or office.
Of course, that's further complicated by the fact that we're supposed to be engaged in physical distancing, which is my preferred term as opposed to social. But physical distancing. So we're meeting more online, whether it be Zoom, Cisco, WebEx, Skype, so you're still staring more at the screen.
Yep. And I didn't understand the surge in styes and swollen eyelids until I started discussing it with a few colleagues and asking if they had seen anything like this. And everybody's agreeing. They're having more styes in their office than they remember. And so, and styes those glands are affected by allergy also. So add the dust to that and the gardening to that. And this is just a whole disaster for eyes in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, boy. Just to let us know, at least for those who may not know what a stye is, I had an unfortunate experience some time ago, a long time ago when I was a little one. But tell us what a stye is and how it can be treated.
Well, there are several glands in the eyelids that we're not even aware of. They're invisible until we get our so-called yampy discharge and we start to get worried. But right at the base of the eyelashes and in the lid itself, you have several glands that have openings to the edge of the lid, and that they provide half of the tears. A lot of people feel that the tears are just what you cry with, but there's a set of tears that will burn your eyes if they're insufficient, that come from that lid margin. They're very important. And I want to appeal to the ladies with their false eyelashes and the glues, the adhesive that you use for your false eyelashes. Those things, as well as the solvent that you use to remove those eyelashes, they're very, very irritating to those glands in the eyelid. So what happens if the exit pore for one or two or clump of those glands gets infected or irritated or swollen, it causes a blockage in the lid. But the process of making the oil for your tear film continues. And so the stuff backs up rather like a backed up drain. And that's really, and with time, that stuff will harden.
Yes.
And that's why we give a warm compress as the immediate treatment before you even reach to the doctor. You should be applying regular warm compresses.
Well, there you had it. That was Dr. Bird just giving an overview in terms of being prepared and protecting your eyes currently during this the passage of the Sahara dust. I know I when I was coming in the office on Sunday, when I woke up Sunday morning, it outside looked a bit funny, and I thought it was going to rain. So when I was putting the clothes out, I was hoping it didn't start to rain. But then throughout the day, I was like, no, remember the Sahara dust is passing. But when I left to come in the office on Sunday, and I was walking down the road, there was a slight issue in terms of breathing, the chest tightness and, the particles going in your eyes and so forth. So I can attest to some of what the doctor said, even though I don't have any breathing issues. So you have to be prepared to protect yourself. A good colleague of mine told me yesterday, he's having issues with regards to, because he has asthma, and he's finding it difficult during this period, so he's wearing his face mask and so forth. But I'll just reiterate the point. Be safe, be careful, wear your face mask during this period as the Sahara dust continues to pass over St. Kitts and Nevis. And as the Ministry of Health said, there's one positive to it. It's suppressing the formation of any tropical storm or hurricane during this period here because we are in the hurricane season currently. So that has been suppressed any formation and development of any particular storm or so forth. Well, at this point in time, we'll take a quick break and we'll come right back and we'll continue with the discussions here on Win FM.
Found the sound 98.9 Win FM.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Horseman's. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Yes, pay zero VAT and get up to $30,000 off on top of that. This has never been seen before. Unprecedented savings at the Unprecedented Auto Sales Event at Horseman's Automotive. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Let me repeat, up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Don't miss it. It's unprecedented. Terms and conditions apply.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 30 days of unlimited social messaging, 10 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, and 1,000 local anywhere calls and texts with the Always On prepaid plan, all for $100. Keep your number when you switch to St. Kitts' most reliable LTE network. Switch to Flow. It only gets better.
Welcome back to Voices here on Win FM. During the first half of the program, we discussed issues with regards to the never-ending elections down in Guyana. They went to the court on Friday, the appeals court, where a concerned citizen challenged the results and filed an injunction preventing the
chief elections officer from handing over the report, the final report, elections report, to the chairman, or the chairperson rather, of the Elections Commission. That matter was dealt with over the weekend, a very quick process, and the appeals court gave its ruling yesterday in that matter. It, in essence, passed the buck down to the Elections Commission to make a determination on the way forward. Also, one of the striking things that came out of that matter is the applicant, Ms. Eslyn David, had asked the court to determine that when you talk about more votes in an elections, the presidential candidate or person winning the elections must win by more votes. She also asked them to give a determination of credible votes, or make a determination on what more votes mean. And the court, in essence, said it's more credible votes. So now the Elections Commission will have to determine out of the entire process that was conducted on March 2nd that they have to take out those that are deemed not credible and give a result based on the credible votes. How that process is going to work is up to the Elections Commission, because as we would have heard from time to time, we had both sides on Voices here on Win FM, and one side is saying claiming electoral fraud, and the other side is saying, how can the dead vote? So that process seemingly is not ending anytime soon. Well, we had Mr. Norton on this morning, and he said he's hopeful of the process ending within a week. That is left to be seen, because as of last evening, the opposition actually moved to the Caribbean Court of Justice. Yes, the process is not ending anytime soon. In the meanwhile, caretaker President David Granger is still overseeing the country, even though his hands are tied in terms of what can be done in that sister CARICOM country. So that's the latest in terms of what's happening in Guyana. One of our colleagues had indicated to us that she will be giving us an underground report in terms of what is actually happening right now, because one representative told us, one lawyer told us that they're expecting a protest today, this morning actually, it's now afternoon, that one of the groups will be protesting the Elections Commission to come up with a credible voter count down there. And at home here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have the Sahara dust issue. And I've heard a lot of complaints from people that, it's an issue that's affecting those persons who have asthma and other respiratory ailment. We saw the Ministry of Health issued a statement yesterday, and that statement is just outlining the obvious. That is, stay safe if you have respiratory challenges. Just ensure that you wear a face mask. I mean, this just goes back it just supports what should be done or what should have been in place currently, and that is people wearing their face masks in the age of COVID-19. So they're just driving home the point that wear your face mask, especially during this period. We have two elements or two periods basically where you have to wear a face mask. We have COVID-19 and the whole social distancing measures, and it's a practice for us for when the second wave should it come to St. Kitts and Nevis, because we have to open our borders, and we have the Sahara dust passing. So, and I can attest to that because I had an experience over the weekend dealing with the Sahara dust. So it's just for us now here in St. Kitts and Nevis to do what's best for us and protect ourselves against all of this. And you can call in, share your thoughts, your views and opinions on anything that matters to you at this point in time. But we're going to be hearing voices, and we'll discuss anything of interest to those in the public. But nevertheless, those are the two major issues that are affecting us here in St. Kitts. Currently, we're still dealing with COVID-19. We're preparing for when the borders reopen. We heard yesterday from
Keith Mitchell, where he outlined some of the plans he had for the sector in terms of when his country do decide to reopen its borders and actually allow visitors in. So how do we prepare here in St. Kitts and Nevis? And that's a question that people have been asking me time and time again. How do we here in St. Kitts and Nevis prepare for when the borders reopen? Should we have those visitors get tested before they come? Do we provide assistance to those who come in and need testing? Or do we keep the borders closed until the end of the year, which is not realistic here in St. Kitts and Nevis? Another topic of interest is the apprehension of at least 10 Haitians yesterday, and that's the big talking point around right now. We did reach out to, the police just indicated to us yesterday that 10 people were taken into custody and 3 escaped. That's the latest word we got yesterday. We did reach out to the chief immigration officer this morning, but we were told that she is in a meeting, and that was up to news time this midday. She was in a meeting, and we have not had any further updates in terms of how they got to St. Kitts. Were they here prior to the discovery in the Keys area? How did the immigration police soldiers were made aware of their presence here in St. Kitts and Nevis? Did they come via a boat recently? These are questions that are still out there that have not been answered, and it's not for want of not answering them. Are they here legally? Are they here illegally? Somebody asks, would they be tested? Would they be repatriated to Haiti? So it's a broader question, a number of questions that we are trying to get answered for you out there listening to Win FM 98.9. We'll try to get those questions answered by 6 o'clock for the evening news. Yes, that's a promise that we're working on right now. We're also going to be trying to get a sense from the Haitian Association here in St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of some of those questions that are being asked about the group that was apprehended. We're not sure where that group is currently. We're still, as I said earlier, we're still awaiting word from the officials in terms of the latest of those Haitians who were removed from the Keys area yesterday. I know sometime back when the initial set was removed, there were some talking points around whether or not we should keep them here in St. Kitts and Nevis, whether or not we should send them back to Haiti. And we're currently in the age of COVID-19, so how are we going to get them back to Haiti is another question. Are we going to charter a flight to have them go? Are we going to have them regularize themselves and stay here in St. Kitts and Nevis? Those questions are up in the air. They're toss-up questions that, again, we're still trying to get answered for you. We did, not for lack of trying, but we did reach out to the officials this morning to get a sense of what is actually happening with these people and get the obvious questions answered. But again, we were not successful as of when I speak. But we'll definitely try to get you some more information and the latest information with regards to those people who were apprehended yesterday. How many of them, how many were boys, how many were girls, how many were men, women, children, what state of, what condition they're in, and there are a lot of rumors flying around concerning these specific people, and we here at Win FM try not to run with rumors, so we're getting all of that clarified for you before we do our report and give you an update in terms of what is actually happening with those people and the whole process and the way going forward for them. They're Caribbean nationals, they're part of CARICOM, but they are treated differently when it comes to the whole CARICOM process, because from our understanding, if they're traveling to most sister CARICOM islands, they need visas. So that's the whole process, and we'll continue here with Voices. Yes, so we don't have any phone calls as yet, but nevertheless, we'll continue with voices. So we were talking, as I was mentioning, about the reopening of the borders in St. Kitts and Nevis, and whether or not we should reopen, and how that, and when we do, how should that process be done? Well, as I mentioned, Dr. Keith Mitchell, the Grenada Prime Minister, was speaking about his country's reopening of the borders, which will be done on July 1st, which most islands are the date that most islands are aiming at. A few islands have already begun accepting flights from the United States and some from Europe. I know St. Lucia had a return of St. Lucia had a return of Virgin Atlantic and so forth. But we'll hear now a report that was done yesterday with regards to Grenada's reopening of the border. Dr. Keith Mitchell, and he was outlining some of his plans for the reopening of the borders in Grenada, and that will be done on July 1st. With borders in the region set to reopen on July 1st, Grenada's Prime Minister Keith Mitchell is outlining new measures he will be instituting come July. It was on Monday, June 15th, that the Cabinet of Grenada agreed to the July 1st date to have the island's airport, the Maurice Bishop International Airport, reopened. The Cabinet believes that the reopening can be done through significant education with all stakeholders in the sector. The Prime Minister confirmed that when the airport reopens, travelers will be required to present documents stating a negative COVID-19 test, while those who are positive will have to bear the cost of treatment.
With that, we're looking at by July 1st, if everything goes well, we have established a contract tracing team, which will trace people with an app available around the country as they move around. As they come into the country, they have to be tested before, and when they get to the airport, they'll have to be tested. We have quarantine areas where when they come in, for example, with the airlines, they would have to go into 2-3 days of quarantine, and PCR tests will be done. When that test is done, if they are tested negative, of course, then they return, they go up to the destination, but we follow them on their movements with an app over the period of time they're going to be here. And if you're tested positive, you go permanently for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, yes, into that quarantine area. But of all, they would have to meet the cost of all those quarantine and the tests available.
Speaking recently on sports show Mason and Guest in Barbados, the Grenada Prime Minister explained his territory's handling of the economic unemployment fallout from the pandemic.
Well, with respect to the unemployment, as you know, the tourism sector was devastated. Most of the hotels had to be closed, and for a lot of the workers were sent home. But because of the way we had managed our economy, fiscally and otherwise, from 2013 till then, we had some savings there, and of course some resources that we were able to announce a stimulus package that was given to the workers. We gave them 40% of the wages of hotel workers and other related areas of service like restaurants and different areas, the agricultural sector, the farmers, the farming community, the vendors in general who sell minibuses in the country. And we agreed that some of them were contracted to private sector and government to provide services, and they did well with their contracts during that period. Outside of those, the rest of them, every single bus were given at least $800 per month for 3 months, so that we have given so far. Will be given for April, May, and June.
Though he acknowledged that the unemployment rate from the pandemic is falling, more work is still needed in the tourism sector.
We developed a task force which was looking into how we open the borders to minimize the risk that we're facing with the Ministry of Health and the COVID. We established a COVID subcommittee which was meeting daily, looking at all issues about how they deal with the situation and confronting us. And we must say that because of that, the ability to help some people, because now with the construction sector coming back on, we had quite a number of projects. So we expect the unemployment situation to be reduced over the coming months. But of course, you know, the hotel sector will not revive overnight. So that we may have to continue to provide some support to the hotel sector. And of course, the St. George's University, which was a major factor in economic activity in the country. They of course, took their students out there and now preparing to come back. And the whole issue is the whole preparation and the protocols that we have to establish to get them back.
Dr. Mitchell is among several regional leaders who were commended for the way they handled the pandemic.
Well, I think we got the national support. People, by and large, understood the seriousness of what they were facing. They recognize this pandemic is no respect of persons. And I think all sectors of the society, the business community, they suffered, but they were right there. The religious community, the leadership supported what we were doing very early. And because of that united effort, I think we have done well. The essential workers, most of them came forward and did what they had to do. We had about 23 cases, and some of them we were worried about, but they all made it. And today right now we have no positive cases right now, and hopefully it will stay so. But we know with the entrance of the border opening not long from now, that we probably will see a few cases, but we are putting everything in place to deal with any possibilities.
Grenada's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell. Meanwhile, in the Federation, there has not been an official announcement on when the borders will be reopened. However, just recently, new Minister of Health Akila Byron Nisbet confirmed that health officials are currently working on a plan for when the borders are reopened. Well, there you had it. That was Dr. Mitchell speaking, explaining some of his plans in terms of how Grenada and the Morris Bishop International Airport will be reopened to tourists. Realistically, the borders has to be reopened at some point in time in the coming days. So how are we going to do that is the big question right now, the $1 million question. I know health authorities and the NEOC and the HEOC officials are working on a plan, and it's something that's going to be up in the air. But we'll continue with Voices here on Win FM on 98.9. We'll pay some bills and we'll come right back to our program.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Hospitals. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Yes, pay zero VAT and get up to $30,000 off on top of that. This has never been seen before. Unprecedented savings at the Unprecedented Auto Sales Event at Horswoods Automotive. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Let me repeat, up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Don't miss this. It's unprecedented. Terms and conditions apply.
Flo's new combo plan, the people's plan. Combo. Got a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow.
I want a combo, but not for my belly. I feel me cell phone, so me call anybody. Call Mr. Man, call Granny. On the island, Flow come combo me.
Yes, there is no need for to force no more. Cause with Flow combo plan, you're paying less for more.
Flow got a new combo plan. You can call anyone, no matter which network you dey on. Just use your Flow.
Dial star 129 number sign to activate your combo plan today.
Welcome back to Voices here on Win FM. As we wind down the program for today, I must acknowledge and apologize to those who are out there and listening to Win FM. We're having some minor technical problems, so a lot of you may not be picking up the station clearly, but it's something that is being worked upon by the technicians and the electricians and all those issues. They're all out there, and they're looking into to fix the problem, and hopefully it can be up and running soon. But yes, so basically today we took a look at Guyana. It's never-ending elections down there. We also heard from one doctor who outlined some concerns as it relates to the eyes and the passage of the Sahara dust. That's key, because most of us don't want to go blind, or any of us don't want to go blind rather. And then we heard about reopening of the borders, St. Kitts and Nevis' borders, and the RLB International Airport and the Vance Armory International Airport to international flights. I know Liat will resume flying shortly in light of the fact that we have these airports reopening. So that's something that we have to look at, and one way in which we have to deal with the influx of people into St. Kitts and Nevis, because tourism is the quote-unquote lifeblood of most economies in the region, and St. Kitts and Nevis is no different. So we need tourists and we need the tourism. And one point was made recently that at this point in time, what would be critical for places like St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, Barbados, is having more of an influx of regional tourism start at the regional level before we do decide to go overseas and allow flights from those hotspot countries, such as the UK, the US, so we can use the influx of regional tourists as a gauge for when the peak of the tourism season gets up and running, and we open the borders and have more international flights coming to St. Kitts and Nevis, more tourists coming from the US, Europe, and Canada. That way now we'll be prepared, rather than having those hoteliers, because I got a message that said the hoteliers are meeting with the health officials today to discuss measures and draft a plan on how they can successfully reopen in the coming weeks. Additionally, that's one way we can look at it, or we can also just have them coming and we start and then we implement those plans that are being worked upon in terms of the protocols and recommendations and best practices for when they do come to the islands. But nevertheless, the borders have to be reopened at some point in time, and that's why we have to be precautious and wear the face mask when necessary. But a bigger problem is and we're trying to get this issue answered, we're told, and we have not acknowledged and have not confirmed it, but it's something that we're working upon in terms of there's some suggestions in some quarters that those people who are going to be entering the Federation in the coming days would have to pay for their time in quarantine and so forth. But that's something that we're going to be trying to get to the bottom of and get some level of understanding with regards to whether or not that is true or not, and if that is the case, why. So it's something that we're looking into, but that's just of what's happening here in St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of major developments in St. Kitts and Nevis and throughout the region. But at this point in time, we'll acknowledge our sponsors for one last time before we do depart here for Voices for today.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Hospitals. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Yes, pay zero VAT and get up to $30,000 off on top of that. This has never been seen before. Unprecedented savings at the Unprecedented Auto Sales Event at Horswoods Automotive. Up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Let me repeat, up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. Don't miss this. It's unprecedented. Terms and conditions apply.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 30 days of unlimited social messaging, 10 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, and 1,000 local anywhere calls and texts with the always-on prepaid plan, all for $100. Keep your number when you switch to St. Kitts' most reliable LTE network. Switch to Flow. It only gets better.
Welcome back to Voices as we wind out the time here on the program for today. We'll definitely be getting some of those questions answered for you that I mentioned earlier in terms of the latest when it comes to the Haitians, what's next for them, as well as, we'll also bring to you tonight when it comes to the latest with the Sahara dust. We get an update for you on that. But we discuss some major issues and developments around St. Kitts and Nevis in the region and what people should be looking forward to. Like I said, the Sahara dust is here. A lot of people, those who are asthmatic or have respiratory ailments, should wear their face mask because it's serious out there in terms of this dust pollution. So just stay safe, and wear your mask. I was your host for today, Jermaine Abel, and do enjoy the rest of your day. Please stay tuned to Win FM. We have the news and sports at 6. We have the quintessential one with you this afternoon, and we have some interesting programming lined up for you for the remainder of today. So do stay tuned and log on to Win FM 98.9. Peace, love, and stay safe.
Found the sound 98.9. Win FM.
This is an unprecedented announcement from Horseman's. Get up to $30,000 off and pay zero VAT on top of that. It's Horseman's Automotive Unprecedented Sales Event happening now. Yes, for the first time ever, you get up to